I don't know about you guys, but I think it's the most cursed thing ever to see not only just MLB The Show on Nintendo Switch, but to see the PlayStation Studios logo directly after seeing the Nintendo Switch logo in the trailer released on the official Nintendo YouTube channel. What I will say about this reveal in the baseball video game industry, RBI Baseball is dead. MLB The Show is by far the premier baseball game. None of the other ones really even come close to it. RBI Baseball was more of an arcade game that sucks! But people played it because it was the only baseball game on the system, on the Switch, on the Xbox for a little while. It's like if you're like me and have 17 crushes. Whoa, calm down, Jamal. And the one you like the least is the one you get with. You're still going to be thinking about your top choice, but you'll take what you can get. Now, in terms of what this means for PlayStation and Nintendo Switch in the future, we've seen in the past that Xbox and PlayStation are more at feud with one another than Nintendo has been with the two. In fact, Nintendo has actually been pretty close to Microsoft as of recently. They got games like Ori, Will of the Wisp, or whatever the other two were called. And they also got Cuphead, I think, and a couple other games. Nintendo was more of a, in my opinion at least, a coexisting company to Sony and Microsoft than a full-on competitor. I mean, let's think about it. The Switch is not going to compete with the PS5 or Xbox Series X. The consoles have pretty different goals. The Switch is more of a handheld meant for portable gaming, at the expense of some performance. The next-gen consoles, the PS5 and the Series X, have the goal of always being budget PCs and the most powerful and efficient consoles ever built. The Switch is less than a pound. If this thing was a competitor to Sony and Microsoft in the graphics department, where the hell are flying cars? But in that sense, it makes sense to try to advertise your games on the Switch. In general, the Switch is far more accessible than the next-gen consoles are. Finding a PS5 or Xbox Series X these days is like legitimately harder than finding a needle in the Pacific Ocean. So if a company wanted this base of people who aren't going to commit their lives to find a new console to play their games, this is the best model to do that. You aren't giving the games to a rival, which in MLB The Show's case is different, but I'll talk about that in a minute. In general, this model is about giving your games to a platform that can be used to advertise and get more people into your stuff. If even a quarter of the people who end up liking the PlayStation or the Xbox game on the Switch end up buying the console, it's a good cause for both Nintendo, Sony, or Microsoft. Now let's talk specifically about MLB The Show's situation, and why it's a bit different than this. The main thing you have to understand about MLB The Show is that it's the only good baseball game on the market today. In that sense, the MLB itself would like it to be available on platforms that aren't just PlayStation. So in my mind, the move to Xbox and Switch in this case is more MLB than Sony capitalizing on profits. Or it could be both, considering how popular the MLB The Show was on Xbox last year. So many baseball fans couldn't play this game simply because they didn't have the right console. And that showed by the numbers I talked about. And no, the numbers for Switch aren't going to be the same. I don't think too many people are going to be playing MLB The Show too seriously on the Nintendo Switch. But the Switch base will probably be little me's who are stuck in their basement, playing RBI Baseball, trying to tell themselves that it's a realistic baseball game. And it'll just be a ton of happy kids playing the game of their dreams. I'm serious when I say this game came out at a terrible time for me. I got my Xbox this August, and for the entire period of time before that, I only had a Switch. My entire childhood would have been different if this happened 5 years earlier. Although maybe that's the goal, maybe this chip from my vaccine. In the end of the day, these companies working together will always be a welcome sight. Sure, keeping exclusives is key to console success, but so many more people will play your studio-developed games if you just ported them to a separate system. And sure, I can see the argument that if all the PS5 exclusives were on Xbox, why would you buy a PlayStation anymore? I mean, Xbox would just have all the same games, and have Game Pass. And that's a good point. Being a scummy business is at the core of the video game industry. But it's really up to these companies to decide what's good for them and what isn't. And I think Nintendo's going to be a good mediator through this entire situation through the coming years. Which honestly shows how important it was for them to not just make a super powerful Wii U, but to go a unique route with the portable system. It makes you appear as a co-worker rather than a rival. And that's how they're going to get these cross-console games. Not because they're this next powerful system. Sony and Microsoft aren't going to become Sega and just dip out of the console industry, start making games for Nintendo. But Nintendo's going to get these games because they're not fully competing with these two companies. They're being themselves.